Six-digit code. Now it's asking me this. Sorry, everyone. Give me 1 second. It's for whatever reason. There we go. It decided to do it. I do apologize, everyone, but it seems that Facebook's taking a little longer to allow me to jump in. That is so funny. Hold on. I'm gonna get this done. Tell you. The beauty of maybe I know I'm going to introduce you there, Sherri, but I know there's some women on the line. I don't know if you want to.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I didn't know if they could hear me or not. So
I do hear a little static in the background. I'm not sure who that is, but
you know, I wonder if it's my computer is making.
I think so. There's something about that.
You want me to click out and come back in?
Probably do that because it sounds kind of off. Yeah, it was definitely her. Let's try this again.
You have a room full of blank screens, Patty.
Is that you, Lance? Yeah. Everybody must be busy doing something. And so they just want to listen in, which I think is great. But for whatever reason, this is so interesting. Oh my goodness. You know, Facebook decided to wanting the 6 code generator, and that I'm fine with it, but it's not arriving. Oh my goodness. So sorry, everyone. Just hang in there. Hang in there. Scroll to tablet. Setting. There it is. Okay. Authentication. This is not the time. I just got the generating code.
Oh, right. You're there.
We're in. Jeez. 745. I'm telling the whole world what it is.
Is that any better, Patty?
Yes, it is. Come on. Let's do it again. Oh, okay. Wow. Really strange what's going on here.
There's so many new things happening on Facebook. So.
Is it? What the heck? Okay. I think it's working. Okay, we're on. Oh my gosh. All right. Sorry once again, everybody. We are on. No, my time. The next. We're almost there. We are almost there.
You got so patient, so patient.
I really appreciate it. It's, you know.
Yeah. You know what? What are you going to do? Like I said,
Facebook
is changing things all the time.
Oh, there we are. Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting there. Just want to.
Hi, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I just want to thank you all for being here, and I'm so excited to be here today with Patty. She is such an awesome lady. We've known each other now for, oh my gosh, Patty, 12 years. So this is
Yeah, is it that long already?
12 years. Yeah, yeah. It's amazing how time flies. But I don't know, I can't see where you're all coming from, but it's just awesome. Technology on the one hand can be challenging, but it's awesome to bring everybody together.
Chatting with. There we are. Okay. Try this again. We're almost in, 7 minutes in, but we're there. And I have my questions that I wrote down for
It's awesome. Well,
okay, we're almost there. Hey, okay, finally. Goodness. Okay. All right. So welcome everybody to Chatting with Patty. We had a little delays, technological delays, but thanks for staying with us and in your patience. I want to welcome my guest today is Sherri Nickols. I'm really excited to have her. We met, as you said, I think it was 15 years ago, was it 12 years ago?
well, yeah, long time. Yeah.
It was at a workshop, I think, correct?
Yes.
That's where you meet the best kind of people. Workshops. And the moment I met you, there was an immediate connection. And so I thought you'd be perfect for my show today. So let me give you, let everybody know a little bit about who you are, and then I'm going to pin you. We're going to go from there. So basically, Sherri is an author, an international speaker. She's certified in empowerment and transformational coaching. She teaches women to successfully balance their masculine and feminine energies, and this is what the big topic today, opening our hearts and really creating a healthy relationship with the people in our lives, and more importantly and most significantly with themselves. So I want to go right into this conversation because it is very important. I'm going to do that. And Sherri, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is awesome. Okay, so I have some questions for you. I'm going to dive right in.
Okay.
And by the way, everyone, feel free to if you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat. Sherri is always ready and willing to respond to any questions. So my first question to you is, since we're talking about love and opening our hearts, many women say they desire deeply connected, loving relationships, yet so many of them struggle to achieve this, even the married women. So what do you think blocks them from having that kind of love?
Yeah, Patty, man, you are diving right in. I love it. So what I have found over the years is that in order to really have great relationships with other people, it starts with having a great relationship with yourself. And what can block us from having that really authentic, great relationship with ourselves, many things, but ultimately it has a lot to do with as we step into our life, from the time we're born, and so many things happen to us, that we build up these walls of protection. Mostly, that's what's happening for us. And the more barriers that we have around our heart, the more times we've had those curveballs. Patty, I'm sure you're right there with me. I mean, nobody escapes this. We all have disappointment. We all have curveballs. We all have situations that really take us for a loop. And the way that we cope with it is to start to close down a little bit. And that means our hearts start to close down a little bit, meaning they have these protective walls, these protective barriers. And so what happens is that little by little, and you're not even aware of it really on a conscious level because it's been happening over your lifetime. But what's happening without really clearing that out is that, you're not actually in your authentic self. You're not actually in a space within your heart that's open so that you can connect with other people. And so really unwittingly, unknowingly, you're blocking that love. And basically what it boils down to, Patty, is resentments, things that we have been angry about over the years that, women, it's so typical, especially for women in the way that we've been raised, and maybe a little bit less in today's generation. But I know certainly when I was raised, and I'm 60. So, when I was growing up, you weren't really allowed to voice things, when things came up, you weren't really allowed to share your feelings fully. And so we stuff them. And so over the years, you get angry, there's this unconscious anger, unconscious resentments. And when those things are unhealed, then it really prevents us from having those close relationships that we would love to have in our life.
So, I'm going to continue on that notion of the unconscious behaviors that we have, and part of the blockages. And just so you know, you're a little bit in delay, your words with your vision. I don't know if other people are seeing that, but you might need to shut off other applications on your computer just to make sure there isn't that delay as much. So I would recommend doing anything else besides Zoom to have it off.
Okay.
In the time, I'm going to just think about what you said about this unconscious behavior, these blockages. Like, when they're unconscious, how do you make them conscious in order to help so that we can actually work on the part of changing it? Like, how do we start to recognize if it is unconscious, or part of it, is it just something like, for me, I know I recognize when something is uncomfortable or I'm going through a resistance, I immediately feel it in my physical body. And so then I say, hey, this is something I need to pay attention to. And then I do the work of trying to find out underneath there what's going on. Is that a way? Do you have other ways? Can you talk a little bit about this, making things that are unconscious more conscious, or recognizing what are these blockages? How do we even begin to tap into the fact that they are there? Is that a
yeah, you know what I have found, Patty, quite honestly, what I have found to be really important is in releasing and to gaining freedom within your heart center is forgiveness practices. And it's forgiveness is an interesting thing, because what I have found with, primarily I coach women, and primarily I coach women who have been in challenging relationships. Because if I can take a step back, that was my story, and I became a coach because they say you make your mess your message, right? And so, having gone through a pretty devastating divorce myself, and really not being very conscious in my marriage, and not really understanding until my marriage was over. In my situation, my husband was having an affair, and I found out in a very crazy way. I had walked into his office and his phone was ringing, and he wasn't home, but a message machine picked up. And back in the day when you could hear people's messages, and this voice came over saying that she had found them an apartment, and she was going to the doctor. And that's basically how I found out that he was planning to leave. And not only was he having an affair, but he was planning to leave. And for me, it was incredibly devastating because I had no clue. I was at the, of course, afterwards you recognize the red flags. But in that moment, I was so shocked and devastated. And, Patty, I was just about to have in vitro. I'd been trying to get pregnant for 3 years. I was giving myself shots. And I don't know if any of you listening have been in a situation like that. And it's challenging. And you're not really understanding, it was almost like when I heard the message, it wasn't registering. And I really, really felt so incredibly shocked and shamed and stupid. You think, I'm sure many of you listening, if this has ever happened to you, or it doesn't even have to be a betrayal of a partner. It could be a betrayal of somebody you've worked with. It could be a betrayal of a sibling or a parent or a friend. But, you feel like you're doing everything right, and then everything falls apart. And so that's what I mean by not really being consciously aware of what has been going on, what patterns have been playing out. Because what I really realized in that is, as my marriage fell apart, And as I was so incredibly sad, I remember walking into the bathroom, after he had left and just gone through boxes of Kleenex, and the house just, I remember it was, Patty, it was this night in LA. I live in LA, and it doesn't rain that much here, but it happened to be raining that night. And, the pattering of the rain on the roof and the echoing in the house, I was all alone, and I just felt even more alone. And it just all kind of came crashing in. And I remember looking in the mirror and just thinking, wow, I don't even recognize myself. How did I get here? How did I get here? And I thought, I can sink or I can swim. And that means, going from feeling like a victim, as we often do when we've been hurt or betrayed, to I want to be a heroine. I want to be the heroine of my story. I want to empower myself. I don't want to be stuck in this sadness and this depression. And so I thought, I'm going to swim. And that meant a lot of inner work. And that's where I started to understand things that were more unconscious than conscious, but a lot of it that I wasn't even aware of, it really came to the surface as I used tools. I think this is really important for all of us when we are going through something that's really challenging, to use some tools. Like journaling was a great one that I used, and what was so great about the journaling was that as I wrote out how I was feeling and what was going on, what I always discovered, Patty, and I don't know if you do any journaling yourself or those of you listening, but it always brought me to the root of what was really going on. So it might have seemed like one thing, but when I journaled, it would always come back to what was really at the root of it. So that was a way that I uncovered what was going on unconsciously as well. That, we have so many defense mechanisms going on that keep us from really seeing those things and keep us stuck in our patterns. So that's one way to answer your question of it. And then I discovered that, if I didn't forgive, and you know what? I wasn't ready in the beginning to forgive. I don't know, many of us that go through things, you're like, no, what happened to me was pretty awful, and I'm not going to forgive, because you have this idea that if you forgive, it's going to, the other person's going to be like off the hook somehow, or whatever they did. It's like you're condoning it. And I think that's really one of the biggest misconceptions that we have. And one thing that I learned in that healing journey is that when you forgive, it is not going to change the past, but it does change the present, and it transforms your future. And it isn't about saying what that person or that situation did was right or wrong. Or right, but what it does is it releases that emotional bond that you have to the situation. So it frees you. So when you forgive, it's really, I know you probably heard this before, it sounds cliche, but it truly is the truth. It frees you. It frees you in a way that you can start living with more joy and more happiness. And it doesn't mean you ever have to even talk to that person again. It doesn't mean that what they did that you're saying it was okay. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just shifting your perspective so that you can be free. And when you shift your perspective, it removes an energetic block that's been really protecting your heart. And that's when you can start to be more open. And ultimately, you want to get to a place of compassion with a person. That doesn't always happen right away. It can take time. Forgiveness is not one and done. It takes time. But you can get to a place ultimately of compassion. Then that's where you gain your true freedom, and you're able to move on. And Patty, if you like later, if there's time, I do have a process that is really helpful with that as well.
Yes, I would 100% want you to take us through that process. To have a tool would be fantastic. On that note, though, you were saying a few things there that were putting me made me think about this idea of forgiveness. You know, I read, I listened to, you know, Brene Brown. I'm sure you listened to her. Also, one of my, I love her podcast. And she had a guest called, her name is Harriet Lerner. She wrote the book on Why Won't You Apologize? I don't know if you've read it or heard part of it. But it made me, and maybe you can speak to that also, how I had to recognize how when, two things. One is when it's hard to forgive because once we've been exploited or manipulated or used, there's a defensiveness that happens. And so we want to either hit back or avoid it. And I started to recognize this defensive listening in myself. I thought I was forgiving, but I honestly had to pay attention to when I was listening or trying to, from a place of wanting to either forgive myself, not just someone else, but even myself in the process. There was another voice that was listening to that conversation defensively, and already like stopping, looking for everything that was flawed in what I was asking for or what I was sharing or what I'm listening to, what the other person is sharing, even if they were the ones that I'll say, quote unquote, hurt me, right? Because in my perspective, in my reality is they did something bad to me. And so even if they're attempting to ask for forgiveness, I'm already in defensive listening, looking for what's wrong in what they're saying. And I hadn't even, it was very subtle, but I hadn't even paid attention that I was actually doing that. I don't know if you've noticed that when it comes to this idea of forgiveness. We get defensive and even allowing that to happen, hence trying to open up our heart. But I thought I was. And then I said, oh my God, there's a part of me that's actually trying to look for the part that's wrong in what they're saying.
Yeah. I think that's totally normal and human, you know, totally normal and human, because that's part of our, you know, we are our soul self, which is the divine self, you know, and then we are the personality self. And so, you know, it's about, you know, that the personality always wants to be right. It always wants to be right. You know, the beliefs that we have, you know, singing that, you know, I've been wronged and I want that apology and I want to be right. But what ends up happening is that, you know, does it really bring you happiness, right? Does it really bring you happiness? Because that's the ultimate thing. And, I think is it Gary Zukav who wrote The Seat of the Soul? And he talks about that, you know, that there's the soul and then there's the personality. And really the gift is when your personality can be in alignment with your soul. Because that's, you know, really when you talk about what I learned from all this, and I'm going to scoot back around, but it, you know, divine love is the way, right? It's the way to our happiness. It's the way to having life that works for us. And what I've realized in all of my heartbreaks as well, absolutely. Did I, you know, was I looking for an apology? Always, you know, always in the beginning, because you feel so hurt and wronged. But that is part of our personality, thinking, you know, we are, you know, there's the theory that nothing is good or bad, that it just is. Things happen, and then we, because of our personality and our perspective, we assign, oh, this is good or this was bad. And then if we say this was bad, then we take it personally and see how that affects us. But I think that everybody's purpose on this planet is to grow in our ability to love. And you can't do that unless your heart has been broken or hurt or, you know, forsaken. If everybody treated you well, we would just be skipping along, right? We wouldn't really have the experience of growing, because what I found in that heartbreak was that you mentioned forgiving yourself, which is so, oh my gosh, is that powerful, Patty, that you brought that up, because that's what it really comes down to. Forgiving yourself for believing that, you know, maybe you were the cause of this, or maybe you weren't enough. And so this person did this because, you know, you just weren't enough. I know I had a client and her husband had cheated, and she could not get through her anger. She was so stuck on that anger, and it was affecting everything in her life because, like you're saying, she wanted him to apologize. She wanted to hear that, you know, he was sorry and that he, you know, everything he had done was wrong. And that wasn't forthcoming. And it was affecting her mothering. It was affecting her ability to work. It was affecting her sleep. You know, it was affecting everything. And when we went through this forgiveness process, I'm going to take you through, what she realized was that deep down, she had this horrendous, terrified feeling that maybe she was flawed and that, you know, the marriage broke up because she just wasn't good enough. And that was so painful for her to confront, that she held on to the anger because that was blocking this underlying fear. And so when we worked through that, so that she understood that that was such a lie that she was telling herself, that she was flawed or that she could even be anywhere near that, that she was able to move through that, forgive herself for even having that thought. And as she did that, the anger towards her husband disappeared. I by no means want anybody to think that she, you know, thought, oh, what he did was okay. No, that wasn't it. But she released all that anger, energy out of herself, which is so important, because when we hold on to that anger, it's not doing the other person any harm. You're harming yourself. And so, but at the bottom of it was her need to forgive herself for buying into this belief that maybe there was something wrong with her. And so ultimately, I think that's why we're so kind of, you know, bent on getting that apology, or because it says something to us about, you know, that we're okay, or that, you know, we're in the right, and so we are okay, we are enough, we are lovable, we are all the things that we, you know, are fearful that we may not be. But that's all part of the personality, right? It's all part of the personality, and it doesn't allow us to really live into our authenticity. And that's what forgiveness is too, is to give for one perspective a bigger perspective, so that we can see it from a higher place. You know, I think it was Einstein that said you can never solve a problem at the level of consciousness it was created. You have to get above it. And that's getting to that place of compassion. You know, again, it doesn't mean you ever have to hang out with that person, spend time with them, none of that. But release that bondage that you feel, because it's hurting you.
Yeah, and including the bondage. You know, I'm thinking about myself, even in the situation where, because I'm in the, you know, I'm a believer of taking responsibility and having ownership and working towards becoming a better version of myself. I remember I also then went through a phase of, I'm responsible for everything, that it was almost debilitating, where I didn't want to do anything because I knew that I would almost beat myself up because I created this around me, right? So then there was that other part where the self-forgiveness, where I could look at something that I want to improve on, but not take on the full weight of it if it didn't work out, if it didn't go that way. Because then I went to the other place. I went to, okay, I'm going to take full ownership of my life. I'm responsible for everything. Then I was hard on myself, like tremendously hard on myself. And I couldn't even forgive myself for the mistakes that I had kept doing. Like, it's bad, you know, you do it once, you attract this type of man, let's say. We're talking about that because something similar happened to me in my marriage at the time. And then as soon as the next guy showed up the same way, I was really hard on myself for letting that happen again. And then that became a heavy thing, instead of sort of looking at it as, you know, almost in a more logical sense, to some, like, really be the observer of that and say, okay, no, you know, kind of do a better assessment of what I was looking towards and forgiving myself. But I was hard on myself for the very longest time for repeating certain patterns, which was perpetuating it to some degree, right? So just speaking to that, because I know sometimes when we're on a journey of becoming better versions of ourselves, it can be a cycle of blaming yourself for not getting it right, and then not forgiving yourself for not getting it right. So I went down that path for a little bit. I don't know. We will do your process after, but I don't know if you want to add to that, or we go right into your process, and that's how it's going to help me out.
Well, I do just want to say, Patty, that I think that You bring up a really good point, and I find this, as I said, I work primarily with women, and I find it time and time again. You know, I think women, we tend to take more responsibility than we need to when things don't work out. We are the first ones to think, oh my gosh, what did I do? How could I have done this better? How, you know, I did the same thing. Oh my gosh, I was constantly thinking, what did I do wrong? How could I have done this better? And I think, Patty, that, you know, the main thing with that is if you are noticing that you have, like you said, you noticed that you had a pattern with following relationships. I think the greatest thing we can do for ourselves is to be loving to ourselves and compassionate to ourselves and say, okay, you know, here I am, and it's okay. And, you know, I love myself, and I love that part of me that's upset with myself right now, because there's love and then there's fear. And anything that is not love is categorized under fear, which includes the judging, the blaming, the criticizing, all of that. And we as women are pretty good at doing that with ourselves. And to love that part of ourselves and say, okay, so, you know, what can I learn here? You know, and it's okay. You know, this is how it's been up until now. And there, it's all for a good reason. And mostly it's to learn how to love ourselves more, you know, to learn that really that, talk about transformation, you know, love is what transforms everything. Love is what transforms everything. And so one of the questions that I found before I take everybody through the process that I want to share, because whether it's first of all, just know it is an incredibly powerful forward question. And whether you use it when you're in a challenging situation with another person, or whether it is about yourself, like Patty, like you just said, you know, where you were kind of beating yourself up for things, it will provide you with, I talked a few minutes ago about having to rise above the current situation to get that bigger perspective. And this question instantly takes you to the higher perspective. And the question is, what would love do? What would love do? And without a doubt, that is the most powerful question you can ask yourself when you're in any situation where you have dis-ease in your body, when you're uncomfortable. And it will, why it is so powerful is it takes you out of your ego self, your personality self, and it instantly takes you into that bigger perspective. And you will get an answer that will guide you, that will be, you know, it will instantly bring you to a different place, and you won't be sitting belaboring something. I mean, I even had a client who said she used it before she responded to something on Facebook, because, you know, sometimes people can say things that are not always the kindest, and her natural instinct was just to, you know, go back and say something. But she stopped herself and she asked that question, and she had a whole different perspective on how to answer it. And so I think that that's a really loving thing that you can do for yourself, because it will guide you on, you know, how to nurture yourself. And it's also incredibly effective with other relationships. It's a question that I asked one time when I was going through, I won't get into the details, but I was in a kind of a butting heads with my mom, and had been like that most of my life with my mom. She's very kind of tough. She was a heart of gold, but not one that was used to expressing her feelings. So you always were at a bit of a disadvantage to kind of understand what was going on with her. And we were in one of those moments, and I stepped outside and I asked that question, and Patty, I mean, instantly I got a vision of what was really going on with my mom, and everything changed for me. And when I walked back in the house, this is the really cool thing about relationships and energy, and understanding that your energy affects other people as well. The huge shift that I had, I walked back into the house. I didn't have to say a word. My mom had shifted equally as great as I had. And for the first time in her life, she shared with me what was going on. And we had a really amazing conversation. And from that point forward, our relationship shifted about at least 85%. And so that's the power that those 4 words have for you, whether you ask it of yourself or with somebody else. And I really encourage each of you to make that put that in your toolbox, make it part of your day when you come up against something tough.
Yeah, as soon as you said the sentence, I kind of felt into it, and you do go to your heart. You can't help it. And to your point, we're often trying to find the right words to have a conversation, and perhaps just starting with that puts us in the right energy, right? So then we radiate something differently. So even if the words are imperfect, the energy is felt, and there's something powerful about that. And what you just said when you were explaining the story that happened to your mom, you actually didn't need to have any kind of deep, long conversation. It's just something that's felt. And I've noticed that a few times because I'm of Italian background, and my and my parents are Italian. I've noticed a few times with my mom that I will go on the phone in a more loving space, because our language is not always, it's not easily translatable. What goes on in my head in English doesn't come out the same way in Italian. So I noticed a few times that I've done that. Now that you're saying it, I hadn't really was conscious about it, where I'm just allowing her to be who she is, instead of me trying to change it, or not even change it. Sometimes I'm trying to express something to her where I know it's going to come out wrong. So I just kind of hold the space of it, if that makes any sense.
Uh-huh.
So you saying that actually reminded me of that, because we actually have language. It's different when it's not your first. English is my first language. Even though I learned Italian when I was a kid, I don't practice it enough. So the words don't always come out right. But to your point, if you can be in a space where you can energetically ask that question, what would love do? Well, then you just be in it, and it may not necessarily need any words, that the energy felt there. So that's quite powerful. I don't know if anybody else felt that, but I know I did. And if anybody didn't, give a thumbs up or however, but that was great. So yeah, I'm going to do that more often. Use that actual sentence just to change my vibe and put me in a more compassionate space, whether it's for myself or for someone else I'm about to talk to. And that doesn't necessarily mean that like love doesn't always come in a pretty bow. It sometimes requires you standing up for something in a compassionate or way, but still standing up for it, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that is such a great point that you made. It doesn't mean you're just going to be a doormat, the saying of that, but it is that I think that what I find the difference is that when you're able to go, and you said it drops you into your heart. So you're out of your head, and so when you're in your heart and you're speaking from your heart, people can feel you. And that's what's important, because if you're in your head and you're saying things, people they can't hear you. It's almost like they tune out. And so you're opening up a channel of really the opportunity to have that deep, we talked about it in your first question, how do you have deeply connected relationships with people? Coming from your heart center and dropping down into that heart center is so key for you being able to show up. And so back to what you were asking about, it may not be just all, sugar coated. Exactly not, but you're able to come from a place of wholeness and love. So if there is something that you want to set a boundary with, that you want to stand up for yourself more, that you are coming from that place of love in the way you're presenting it. So you're going to feel better about the way you're presenting it, and chances are the person is going to hear it in a different way. And it has the possibility, and I'm even going to say probability, depending on the person that you're talking to, because everybody has different levels of spiritual awakening and presencing and their own journey as well. But a great possibility of it opening up to a conversation that's going to be one that's going to evolve the relationship or the situation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm going to keep that into what would love do. That's in there. Perfect. Thank you for that. So
Yeah.
you do have a process that you actually can take us through with this idea of forgiveness, learning to forgive ourselves,
I
right?
do. Yeah, I
I
absolutely
would
do.
love that you do that. So
Oh,
can you take us through that?
thank you, Patty. My pleasure. Okay, so everybody get comfortable if you can. If you're able to close your eyes, turn off any devices that might distract you. Really give yourself this time. It's a 5-step process, and it's about a 10-minute process. So, with your eyes closed, go ahead and start taking in some really nice deep breaths. Some really, really nice deep breaths. And just feel yourself relaxing. Feel that breath flowing down through your body, clearing and cleansing any thoughts that you might have that are not supportive. Just allow yourself to release those with the out breath. And with your next breath, imagine the top of your head opening and this beautiful stream of light flowing through. Again, bringing healing and love into every part of your body, letting it flow, clearing out old energy, old stories, allowing yourself to sit deeper down, and inviting your mind to calm and to open, inviting your heart to calm and to open. And now bring to mind somebody or some situation that could use your forgiveness. And in your mind, play it out, in the whole victim story, whatever it was that happened. If it was with another person, just imagine what they were saying, what they did that was really hurtful, really felt like a betrayal, really bothered you. If it was a situation, think about that, what happened. And it might be that you have something with yourself that you want to forgive. So think about that. But whatever it is, really play it out in your mind, how it made you feel, what happened, how it made you feel, and how you were wronged. Including if that's yourself, were you beating yourself up? What were you doing that was really not nice to yourself? Okay, and then the second step is that you're going to ask yourself, what is this costing you? Holding on to this. What is it costing you? Is it costing you your happiness? Is it costing you your health? You're getting so stressed out by it every time you think about it that it is really wearing you down. Is it costing you your sleep? Is it costing you showing up as the mom you want to be, or the father you want to be? Is it costing you your job, your ability to perform at your best, as your best self? What's it costing you? Make a note of that. And ask yourself what the payoff is for it. Just as I shared earlier about my client Jody, who was holding a lot of anger, and that the payoff for her holding on to that anger was that she felt like if she did that she was off the hook for having any responsibility in the marriage falling apart. And deep down, she was terrified that it was really her fault. And that was uncomfortable for her, so it was more comfortable to blame her husband. So that was her payoff, is that she could hide from that potential lurking fear. But then once she healed that, she no longer needed it. So what is she realized that just wasn't true. So what is your payoff? What is your payoff? What are you getting out of it? And it most of the time isn't something good. Maybe it's keeping you small. Maybe it's keeping you from shining your light. Maybe it's keeping you from having other connected relationships with other people that are just waiting for you, waiting for you to show up and have more joy in your life. Maybe it's keeping you from having fun. Maybe it's keeping you depressed. So what is the payoff? And step number 4 is, who would you be without this story? Who would you be without this story? Would you be joyful? Would you be happy? Would you be able to show up and live into your gifts and your talents fully? Who would you be? So now I want you to imagine, I want you to bring forth into your mind and into your, your emotional state, all the emotions from this situation or this person that you have identified are there for you. The hurt, the pain, the fear, the anger, the frustration, the sadness, the depression, whatever emotion that you're experiencing from this situation. I want you to bring it all forward. And I want you to imagine a container. This container can be inside your body or outside your body, but put all those emotions in the container. Put them all inside. Put them, every last one of them, put them inside that container. And notice what shape the container is. Notice how big it is. Is it rectangular? Is it square? Is it circular? Is it triangular? How much of your body does it take up? If it's inside your body, if it's outside your body, how big is it? And now notice what color the container is. And if it had a texture, what would the texture be? Is it rough? Is it bumpy? Is it lumpy? Is it sharp? Is it like daggers? Is it slimy? Is it gooey? What's the texture? Notice if it has a smell. Is it stinky? Is it stale? Is it fishy? What's the smell? If it had a smell. And it might not. Whatever answers you're getting are perfect. They're perfect. And if you're not able to visualize, if you can sense something, it doesn't matter if you're able to visualize or not. Just allow yourself to be in this moment, connecting to it. It's all perfect. And now imagine that there is a beautiful, golden, divine light flowing down from the heavens, radiating down like a spotlight, flowing down, flowing around this container, above it, below it, around it. It's shimmering, it's glimmering. It is a force of good. It is love. It is light, divine light. It is healing love and healing light, and it is flowing, swirling around this container. Now you see it, it's flowing in the container. It's bringing that shimmering, divine, loving, healing essence into that container, flowing above it and below it and all around it and encircling it and shrinking that container down. You see that box getting smaller and smaller. You see that container, maybe it's breaking into little pieces, but it is dissolving this amazing divine light. And now give it a color. Whatever that color of love is for you, whatever that color of healing is for you, add that in now. Maybe it's 2 colors, maybe it's multicolored. Whatever pops in is perfect. Just allow it to surround that container and continue to see it getting smaller and smaller and smaller until all the pieces, maybe all the little particles of that container have just poof into dust and they've disappeared. Keep seeing it getting smaller and smaller. That divine love and light, that force of good is literally transforming it, allowing it to be released, allowing it to disintegrate. And now notice in your body where all those emotions were. And we want to now replace where that is in your body. We want to fill it up with love and happiness and light and whatever you want to fill it up with. You choose. Maybe you want to fill it up with laughter or fun or playfulness. So fill in that space, because nature abhors a vacuum. So we want to fill it in with good things. Love, light, happiness, joy, fun, playfulness, happiness, bliss, lightness, expansiveness, maybe flowers. And imagine whatever you've put in there that they are, you're nurturing. Whatever you've put in there, you've planted, is nurturing you. And it's nurturing you emotionally, and it's nurturing every part of your body. And see the roots of what you've planted going deep down, going all the way down your legs, your feet, into the earth. Just plant those nurturing, loving thoughts. And maybe you see it sprouting even more and filling up even more. And imagine that love, whatever color you've assigned it, that is love for you, sprinkling some beautiful, loving rain or glimmering, shimmering light over it, allowing it to prosper and grow even more abundantly until your whole body is filled up, and feel it flowing up into your mind as well. Your whole body feels expanded and loving and light. And now notice how you feel. Ultimately, notice how you feel now. Just notice when you think back about that situation. How do you feel? Ultimately, you want to feel that compassion, because that is the optimum freedom for you. But just taking notice. Notice if there's any change, any difference. And now you want to send the person or the situation a blessing. So silently send them a blessing. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be at peace. May you be loved in your life. And maybe you want to send a stream of light with that blessing. Notice if there's been any release in your body, any shift in perspective. And then gently opening your eyes, coming back into the room, maybe you want to, reach up and wiggle your hands around and wiggle your feet around and get that loving light inside of you. Yeah, I love it, Patty. Twist your head and maybe take a drink and just, take a deep breath. Wow. You look amazing, Patty. You look beautiful. You are beautiful, but you just look, wow, radiant.
Well, thanks, Sherri. I really tried to be in the moment with everything that you were saying. And it's funny, I'm going right into sharing.
Please do. Yes, please.
Well, because for me, it wasn't necessarily directed at someone else but myself. And there's something that I'm personally, it was funny when you were giving us ideas of what it could be about. And it was kind of going everywhere. And then only when you got to the third question or so, then I realized what this was really more what I needed to kind of be reminded of. And it's a personal, sort of professional, creative thing that I'm feeling. It was like a cloud. It wasn't anything dense, but it was like this cloud particles over my head. And so when I started off, it felt like this weight, like on my head. And so and then allowing it to kind of dissipate, trusting that that's happening, because my head went into, okay, this really is that, trusting that that's happening. So I went into that back and forth for a while. And then realizing what I actually need in order to release it, like to kind of stay on that, because I think
well, not I think, I know I will beat myself up for not being able to understand something or get something done or created, because I feel like I have a disability somehow and trying to get it. Instead, what came to me was get in a space of asking for more and more help in whatever way I need. If I can't since I can't figure it out, so the figuring out is do everything I need to do to get the right help. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what came to me, instead of me still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense. So that's was sort of.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely felt it, Patty, because I could see. I'm sorry. Was there something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, that was it. That was going on, was just that release was stop trying to figure it out. Get the help to figure it out. Get the help to figure it out. Get the help. Because I keep trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I could see on your face, there's all of a sudden this relaxation and this smile started to happen in your face. You could see just the bliss coming in, because that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, to have to figure everything out yourself, and I think that that's such a good point. I think so many people feel that way, and to allow yourself that help. So good. Wonderful. I saw it. Yeah.
Thanks. Awesome. That was great. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know if anybody else felt anything, but I know I did. So there you have it. So we are at the end, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. But is there any sort of final words you want to share with all of us here, and maybe tell us how people can reach you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I also have a gift for everybody who's watching. It is a diamond power meditation that I created that will help to align you with the truth of who you are, that will, if you're feeling stressed, and I know in these times that we all have this feeling of uncertainty and wobble, and it will help you get back on track into your centered state. And you can find that at diamondpowertv.com. And that'll give you access to that meditation. And I have a website, which is unleashyoursparkle.com. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me at Sherri, which is a double R, SHERRI, at unleashyoursparkle.com. And, my final words are just remember, you are this absolutely beautiful diamond, and never forget that. And in order for you to really shine and be the brightness and really live into everything that you are, it is about remembering that and clearing the things that are keeping you from connecting to that. And that when you connect to that, that's your truth. That's your diamond power, and that knowing that that is divine love, your connection to divine love. And when you're connected to that, life gets much easier. So you are a beautiful diamond. Don't ever forget that.
Thank you, Sherri. Those were very sweet and special words. And I will take this to heart. What would love do? That will be my new sentence to ask myself, these 4 powerful words before I do anything. And trusting, as you're saying, I get the sense that by doing this practice, that we all have sort of these answers within us. If we can remove that, all of that stuff that's holding us down, whether it's through the help with a coach like yourself, or by ourselves, or a combination of all that. So thank you. Lance also says thank you, Sherri.
Oh, you're so welcome. And just everybody, just remember to go at the end of the day, go through your day and do this process, and that will clean your heart every day, just like flossing or brushing your teeth.
Right.
That'll keep your heart clean. So thank you so much for having me, Patty, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you everybody for joining in, for listening live on Facebook. Thank you all. Like this, share it, do whatever you would, spread the love, and let's get on the cleansing and opening of the heart from this day forward. Thank you, Sherri.
Absolutely. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.